The Middle Ages, a time of castles and knights, of chivalry and conquest. But beneath the shining armor and royal tapestries was a darker world, one dripping with filth, soaked in stench, and ruled by customs so vile, so revolting they defy belief. This was not the romantic era you'd been taught about. This was an age of unrelenting human suffering, wrapped in a blanket of superstition and sewage. Imagine walking down a street with no sewers, no toilets, and suddenly feeling a warm splash hit your face. It wasn't rain, it wasn't soup. It was last night's excrement hurled from a window with only a casual guard loo as warning. You were lucky if it missed your mouth. This was daily life. The town stank of decay. Human waste ran in open gutters. Rotting food, butchered animal parts, and dead rats mingled in the mud. In summer, the stench was unbearable. In winter, it froze into solid chunks that cracked underfoot like brittle bones. But the disgust didn't stop at what you saw or smelled. It seeped into the customs, the cures, the rituals that were meant to heal the body and purify the soul, but often did the opposite. Let's begin with the body, because in the Middle Ages, your body didn't belong to you. It belonged to your village, your church, and your filth-ridden fate. Hospitals weren't places of healing, they were warehouses of death. The doctors wore robes crusted with pus and blood. They rarely washed their hands. They didn't know about germs, but they believed the body was ruled by the four humors: blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm. And if you were sick, it was because these humors were out of balance. To rebalance you, they cut you open, or they placed leeches on your flesh to suck the poison out. The weaker you became, the more certain they were that the cure was working. Some believed powdered toads, ground up skulls, or cow dung could heal you. One prescription for a swollen throat? Tie a dried goat's lung around your neck and chant a prayer. But perhaps the most disgusting cure of all came from the bodies of the dead. Yes, corpse medicine. It was believed that fat from the dead had healing powers. Grave robbers were paid handsomely to collect it. People rubbed this human grease on wounds, or worse, swallowed it. Desperation breeds horror. And in an age with no science, no comfort, and no hope, people did whatever they thought might save the ones they loved, even if it meant cannibalizing the dead. This was not medicine. This was medieval madness, drenched in fear and desperation. Imagine not bathing for months, years even. Because in the Middle Ages, water was seen not as cleansing but as dangerous. People believed it could open your pores and let disease in, so they avoided it at all costs. Even the wealthy didn't wash. They doused themselves in oils and floral powders to cover the stench. Wigs were crawling with lice. Flesh was cracked and filthy beneath layers of cloth and shame. Bathhouses, once common, became dens of sin in the church's eyes, so they were shut down. Cleanliness became associated with vanity, or worse, lust, and so filth became holy. The dirtier your skin, the cleaner your soul, and when they did eat, the meals were spectacles of grotesque indulgence. Roasted animals with their eyes still staring, meat fermented for weeks. Cheese so aged it moved with maggots. For the poor it was worse. Thin stews, sometimes made with spoiled meat or dead animals, fished from the gutters. Bread mixed with sawdust. Hunger gnawed at every corner of their lives, and desperation made anything edible. The church preached that sex was filthy in between husband and wife. Pleasure was sin. Love a battlefield of shame. Women were shamed for menstruation, called cursed, unclean, even possessed. If a woman was suspected of adultery or impurity, she could be paraded through the streets naked, bleeding, humiliated. Monks and nuns whipped themselves to rid their bodies of lust. Some mutilated their genitals to free themselves of temptation. And still, they wept, because in a world this cruel, pain was the only proof of piety. And when that pain became too much to bear, people turned on each other. Women were burned for temptations they never chose. Men were tortured for desires they never acted on. Children were punished for simply being born. The Middle Ages were not only disgusting in filth, but in heart, in the way they twisted love into shame, hunger into virtue, into justice. In the Middle Ages, justice wasn't blind, it was bloodthirsty. In the crowd, they didn't look away. They cheered. Executions were a form of entertainment. Families brought their children. Merchants set up food stalls. It was a holiday of horror masked as righteousness. But there was no mercy in this justice. No dignity. A man could be hanged for stealing bread to feed his starving son. A woman burned for dreaming too boldly or speaking too freely. A child beaten until they bled just for asking why the sun didn't shine on their soul. Inquisitors believed suffering brought salvation, so they invented devices so cruel they felt inhuman. The Iron Maiden, the rack, the pair of anguish. Tools not of order but of agony. Women were accused of witchcraft for knowing herbs, for helping neighbors give birth, for simply being too old, too alone, or too different. They were drowned, burned, dismembered. And when they screamed, they were told it was the devil leaving their throat. The guilty were made into warnings, left to rot in hanging cages, flogged naked through towns, forced to wear masks shaped like pigs, donkeys, or devils meant to mock the soul itself. But the worst cruelty wasn't in the pain inflicted. It was in the way pain became normal, expected, holy. Because in the Middle Ages, if you didn't suffer, God must have forgotten you. This was not justice. This was despair. This was a world where fear ruled, where no one was truly safe, not even the innocent, not even the children. We look back at the Middle Ages and shudder at the filth, the cruelty, the madness. But behind every rotten custom was a human being, a soul, a mother, a child, a brother. Someone who laughed, who dreamed, who wept in silence. They didn't choose to live in filth. They didn't choose to eat rats or rub corpse fat into wounds. They were born into a world that taught them this was normal. That pain was divine. That love was shameful. That justice was something to be feared, not hoped for. These weren't monsters. They were survivors. Survivors of a time so dark, it swallowed compassion. So cruel, it carved despair into the bones of everyday life. Their cries were not always heard. Their stories mostly forgotten. But their pain remains etched in the shadow of our history. And maybe that's why we must remember, not just the castles and kings, but the filth, the screams, the customs so disgusting they make our stomachs turn. Because in remembering their darkness, we protect our own light. For in every cruel custom of the Middle Ages, there was always someone just trying to survive. Centuries have passed, but echoes remain. The dirt may have been washed away. The blood may have dried. But the fear, the suffering, the blind cruelty, they still whisper through time, reminding us that humanity is fragile. We like to believe we've evolved, that we are different now, cleaner, kinder, wiser. But every time we look away from suffering, every time we dehumanize the desperate, every time we trade empathy for comfort, we risk becoming them again. Let history's filth be the mirror that cleanses our souls. Gentle, aching. This was the Middle Ages, ugly, vile, terrifying, but it was also human. And if we forget the depths to which we once fell, we will fall again.